Yes, dude. I think one of the biggest things that we miss as humans in our world today, that's actually a really positive thing to experience, is
Hey there, tech enthusiasts. Welcome to Tech Time with Sweet Tea, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of technology and how it can either serve you or, well, not serve you. Here is your host, Sweet Tea, and he's on a mission to help you harness the power of tech in your life. Join him as he chats with people about their tech journeys. From the latest gadgets to digital dilemmas, we'll explore it all. So grab your favorite device, hit that play button, and let's keep it real in the world of tech. Tech Time with Sweet Tea is here to help you stay plugged in and empowered. Let's get started.
I'd like to welcome back to this episode of Tech Time with me. I'm Sweet Tea, and I'm talking with Zach Fagerberg today. How are you doing? Where are you at today? What are you excited about today, this morning?
Tommy, thanks for the intro, my friend. I'm coming at everyone from Montana this morning. And really what's got me excited this morning is I'll actually, in 2 weeks' time, the first week of October, I'll be down in Phoenix, Arizona for a big networking event that I've had on the schedule for a couple months now. So I know we've had some talks off camera about you just going to the Summit of Greatness and that being a blast. So yeah, I'm excited for the big event I've got coming up here in a few weeks.
Phoenix. I've been there many times. Phoenix, have family living there, right there, close to downtown Phoenix. Great. Always love going to Phoenix, Arizona.
I'm excited for some sunshine for sure. The weather up in Montana is starting to get a little fallish, so I'm ready for some 80s and 90s.
So is that what you're living up in Montana? So I thought I saw Colorado, but
So yes, I actually, up until the end of July, I've lived in Colorado for all 29 years of my life up to this point. Right at the end of July, beginning of August, I came up to Montana, and Montana is really meant to be a short-term place. Ultimately, the next step or place I want to be long-term is down in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area. I've
oh,
spent a good
nice.
amount of time down there this year, and there's just some really cool communities and people that I've gotten to meet in that area. So also part of why I'm excited to get down there in a few weeks.
Very cool, very nice. How you stay up there even through the winters in Montana?
That would be not the plan. There's definitely, a few dominoes that have to fall the right way to get out of here before winter this year. It may end up being more midwinter this year that I head down there, but having grown up in Colorado my whole life, I've done the winter thing. I'm ready to avoid winter for a couple of years, and I'm a real sunshine guy at heart. So I'm not opposed to chasing the sunshine throughout the year.
Well, if you know anyone listening, anyone you or anyone know any about Arizona, they get a lot of that too, depending on where you are, either north part, closer to Colorado and Arizona. I've been to Flagstaff and I've seen the Grand Canyon where it can get really cold and actually see snow on the ground in northern Arizona.
Yes, definitely. And I'm not opposed to snow, but if I can avoid it for the most part, it makes me a happy camper.
So, like before we get into the meat of questioning, and I must say, this is the first time I kind of redirected that questioning of like having the question set and like eh, sending the response back ahead of time. Like I said, this time I would love to see the responses before him, but I don't need to see him. And before it's like, oh no, you don't have to. It's like, but like helping me is driving the whole conversation beforehand. So thank you for sending all the responses up. That's with the heart of transparency here. So thank you for sending all that in advance.
Of course, Tommy. I think that I'm a believer in being prepared for things. So when others are kind enough to give me the space and time to share audiences, I want to set us up for success by being prepared.
Yeah, of course, being prepared, as they say in the Boy Scouts. What I liked for a five-lining question, and I might not remember them all. It's been a little bit since I used them, but I still came across these before getting to know people and meeting and when you're asking for like first time talking, I'll go into detail about who they are, what they're doing, who are you, and like the first real line of question, who are you? These weren't part of the responses, but I just throwing them in. But there should be about yourself. So this should be really easy. Who are you? What do you do? And who do you do it for?
I love it, Tommy. This is a great question to start with. So my name's Zach Fagerberg. Last year, I created and founded my own coaching business, which is Actualized Potential Wellness Coaching. And yes, I'm a wellness coach, but I also love the term mindset mentor in the work that I do. I really focus on wellness coaching and mindset work with entrepreneurs, executives, or really anyone who's driven and passionate about the big visions that they're trying to bring to life. I think that the reason I titled my or named my business Actualized Potential is because I so firmly believe that wellness is a mandatory foundation for anyone to establish if they're really going to bring their best to those things that they're passionate about, whether it's in entrepreneurship or in the boardroom, or in other areas of life.
So who are you? What do you do? And who do you do it for? Did you touch on that one yet? Who do you do it
Yeah,
for?
certainly, man. So, most of the clients that I work with right now are in the entrepreneur realm or are in the executive realm. So they're, CEOs of companies or in the boardroom making big decisions, or they're running their own business. I think that those are endeavors that ask a lot of anyone who's taking care of them. So really working hard to help them establish routines and habits that support their wellness so that they can bring their best self to those big things they're working on every day.
Bringing the best self, and that's what getting into the right mindset. I love it. So now making the switch over to as the main topic of this podcast, technology, tech talk, with as it says in the title there. When you hear the word technology, what comes to mind?
I think that the initial thought, obviously, is that it's so integral. Yes, I believe that's the word I'm trying to say. In our society today, there's really no getting away from it. Whether it's the device that's usually attached at our hip, and in our pocket, or it's the other pieces that are, the appliances we use throughout the day, or the vehicles that we use to get around in. Technology is really, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And so I think it's, as we've talked about off camera, and we'll talk about more today, I think it's more about understanding it and understanding how to work with it in a positive light, not let it run your world.
Yeah, I've especially from this morning, I have much to think about, like when it's been thinking about positivity, and I have a whole new like shifting perspective on that just from this morning. But like when I come to think of it, and technology is anything, it doesn't have to be the computer, the phone. It's I when I think of it, and I hear innovation, and I'll touch on more of that towards the end too. But I hear innovation, and it's been around. It's not going away. You're absolutely correct, and it's been here for ages, going back to prehistory times when there was a first fire made. There was a first all your tools, your stone, your that is technology too. It's all like, and new things that come around, or new tools, any kind of tools like that, and it's been around for ever since this planet's existed.
Definitely. It's kind of what we do as humans is create it, right?
So innovation. So with the innovation in mind, start out with some positivity here. What is the best piece of technology that you can't live without and have used in your life?
So I would echo my response here is one that I've given to others as well. And I think one of the greatest tools, simple but effective, that we have access to on a very regular basis these days is the camera. There are so many people that are using it for content creation and to get their ideas out into the world. But I think it's a really profound tool for self growth, right? And yes, a little bit of this comes from my personal trainer and gym background, right? And being able to analyze your movements in the gym and learn from a third party perspective because you can't watch yourself while you're doing it. But I think through that, I've taken that tool and put it into use in other areas of my life too, in podcasts and other interview scenarios, getting to come back and watch that video, regardless of whether it's in the gym or an interview type situation. It's a really powerful tool to identify those parts of yourself that you want to keep working on. I think that keeping it in the positivity light, it's not about using it to crack the whip on yourself and beat yourself up, right? It's really about jumping in and saying, wait a second, I can still make that a little better, or I can tweak that. It just takes a little bit of change in this area or a little bit different approach here. So I'm a big fan of video.
This word I think may come up a lot, but get with you today, and like mindset and it's being awareness, having the mindset and having awareness mindset, and you say don't beat yourself up, but just being aware that if you're doing it for the first time, or like being on camera, recording, talking to a mic, if you're doing it for the first time, just being aware it's going to be bad, right? And then, but you can improve from there.
I love that, man. I love that you brought that up. I think a lot of our society these days puts this expectation out, no matter what you're new in, that you should be an expert right off the bat, right? And I think that coming into any new scenario with that awareness and understanding that it's going to be a rocky road for a little bit, but I'm willing to go through that is such an important mindset to have.
And anything we did, like when we're young babies learning to walk, it's sort of what we didn't even think about that. Like we just tried to get up, walk, fell, tried to get up again. Like, oh, I'm not bad at it. I'm trying to walk. Like we didn't think of that at all.
I love that example, man. I think it's a really profound one that points out the getting on our own case is a learned practice from society, not one that's naturally installed in us.
So what one example where you have used the camera, and before I move on, with the camera to help improve the way it is you do something, like one example?
Definitely, man. I think that, the medium we're using it in today is a really good example. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, when I created the business, I really wasn't, super active on social media. I wasn't out there doing podcast episodes and that kind of thing. And so as I've jumped into that over the last year, I've really been diligent about not being afraid to go back and watch the tape, whether it's that first podcast recording I ever did, or it's those first few pieces of content that I put out as reels on Instagram. Being able to go back and watch those, like we said, without getting on my own case or beating myself up, and just simply to learn from it, and create more awareness around what I actually do in those situations has been super helpful. And don't get me wrong, I still got lots of learning to do. I think that can be the case forever, but that's been such a strong tool for me to gain confidence as I've gone through this first year in making those tweaks and adjustments so that I can show up the way I want to show up.
Absolutely. And I watching yourself. I don't know about watching myself yet. I'm getting there, but I definitely, like, as we discussed before in our connection, that I love listening to myself. Like there's certain times I just would say like, oh, I'll listen, and like my New York accent comes out when I say this word. Like I love that.
Dude, and I would give you big props, man. I think that I've met a lot of podcast owners and creators who don't go back and listen to themselves, because they're like, nope, it's done. I put it out there. It's done, So good for you for being willing to go back and check the audio.
It's like, I mean, not to like get down too much on myself, but like, is it bad that I want to listen to myself?
Absolutely not, man. Absolutely not.
All right, so let's talk about, and with the idea of then looking at the past, remembering the future as kind of what they say, something just going in order here in the responses and the questions that I had lined up. What is something you wish that existed 10 years ago that really could have supported you at that
I love
time?
this question. When I was running through the questions pre-recording here, yeah, I loved this one. And I think the thing that always comes to mind is that when I was in high school, athletics was my big focus, and YouTube was just getting started. I mean, it was in its first 8 years. It was very infant and nowhere near the library of content that it is today. But realistically, looking at where it's at today, being a young athlete 10 to 15 years ago, the ability that not just young athletes, but really anyone who wants to learn anything, there's so much information through visual learning that's available on YouTube. And you can use things like the reviews, the comments to kind of help you sift through the BS and find the stuff that's really going to actually help you move the meter and change how you're working on something. So I think that YouTube is such a profound resource right now. I'm a visual learner, so being able to watch someone go through it, not just be told what to go do, I think would have been something 10 or 15 years ago as a young athlete trying to get better at my skills would have been something I just absolutely abused having it at my disposal, you know?
And I love that you said sifting through the comments. I love that because I always say, I don't know if I got it from someone else, and I hope I'm not remembering. I think I kind of came up with on my own, inspired by the people, of course. But I was one time saying the context is in the comments, like what social media you're
Yeah.
posting, and look at the comments. Now there some very negative comments in there a lot of time, but the you learn now you look at the comments and then open up the article or whatever post it is, the context is in the comments. So with like the idea of like teaching how to use it better, more efficient, more to benefit you, it's learning how to use the tools. And that's one thing I love that you said, the sifting through the comments.
Oh, dude, I love the context is in the comments little blurb there. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, obviously YouTube and anywhere else on the internet, it's easy to find the wrong information, because there's no rules against people not putting out the wrong information. And so I think it is important to still be able to critically think for yourself and use those comments as a way to determine, is what this person is giving me in this video real, or are they kind of throwing me a fib here and barking up a tree that's not necessarily going to help me out?
Yeah, definitely. That's so yeah, so looked at the 10 years and past prior, and I'd love like if I didn't really get into like the video stuff until I got to college, and and then even then, like I'm a video today, and trying to look for another word to use besides hate, but I hated to edit. Like we were like in the studio producing to avoid the edit bay, to avoid post production, as we call it. And it wasn't until maybe my last final year that I that's when I really grown into video editing. Then and I where it's going. I talk too long sometimes and get off in the transit
That's just
tangent.
fine, man. I think one of the things I picked up there is like, that's one of the things that YouTube would have helped me with, right? As a young athlete, is understanding that, like, hey, there may be some parts of what you want to be good at that you're passionate about that aren't necessarily fun to work on, or easy to work on. But as you alluded to, the further down the road in any passion you go, it's in taking ownership and getting good at those kind of hard details that you really start to sink your teeth into something.
We're getting okay now. Get into a little more deeper. It's going to maybe a negative, something that you wish never existed, never or something that you could see, or how, let's take it this way, something that you wish never existed, or something that you can make an improvement on.
So I think really one of the things that I wish was so different about technology and specifically social media platforms is they're designed very intentionally, right? In terms of keeping people on the apps and keeping them involved on the app. And a lot of that is designed around instant gratification in our physiology, in our neurochemistry. And I just don't believe that that's the only way we could have built those apps to have them be successful, right? I really wish that in those apps there was more reinforcement behind the thought process of like, hey, you want to be on here to build connections, to build community, to share impact, to learn from others. Like, cool, that's going to take more than you just going through the scroll, right? That's going to take you reaching out to make new connections. That's going to take you engaging with other people's content if you want others to engage with yours. I think that that's the one thing I just wish was so different, is that it was all geared in a way that reminded us as humans that the real stuff that's worth having takes time, and rarely do we get cool big things happening from instant gratification.
Yeah, and when talking about like keeping on the platform, that's 100% a real thing. Like, we're when my social side, social media side, where it's like we need to make, or in my all my learnings and like creating for digital content, we have to keep the platforms happy. We have to do this to add a slide here on the YouTube clip, or do anything to keep people there and make the platform happy. And when talking about making so what I was going to with that, how I actually came across you, I found you one day. Algorithms, I barely use algorithms. Algorithms are what the platform thinks, and a lot of times they're actually pretty good at guessing, but what they think you want to see. I don't
Right.
use algorithms. I go to, in chronological order, Twitter, now X. I've actually never even known Twitter had a really algorithm, because I never used it. I go there and search like one conversation topic on there, and I know how to see exactly what I want, and that's chronological order feed. They just brought, it was hidden, a lot of the features, like one of the features there on Meta and Facebook, and I think they just brought it back to light. And that's how I actually came across you one day. Like, I saw a post that you made about podcast, and I wrote in a comment, and if I was just scrolling on the algorithm, probably wouldn't have seen that.
I love that you just said that you're capable of controlling what those apps show you if you put the time into it. You know, I think that so many people do just start scrolling and let the algorithm carry them away. I love that reminder that you just gave people that, like, hey, you're a human being and you're capable of going in and showing that app how you want to use it, not how that app wants to use you, you know?
Yeah, it was just one tap, and I can see the feed of my followers and not just 10% of my followers.
Right, right.
So, with the move, staying on the same topic of negative positivity and bringing it back more in a positive light. And this is one of the things that just I came across this morning, like we talked about in the opening. Is it more about, and the question about for you too, that I heard Price Pritchett talk about this, and he posed this question: is it more about staying positive, or is it about being less negative?
You know,
It's
man,
not a trick question.
yeah, I would lean towards the positivity side every day of the week. You know, I think that there is something to be said for the power that comes from like wanting to escape negative things and get away from them. but I never have felt that that's as big of a motivator or a drawer of chasing down more of the positive, you know?
So you're looking to actually seek more positivity each day, and rather just like, I guess being less negative would be the passive part, but
I
you're
love
being
that comment.
proactive and seeking more positivity.
I love that, man. I think that that's one of the things, you know, in my realm where I work with people in wellness and that kind of thing. Reactivity is a place where you'll never get ahead of the game. If you're always playing the reactive game, then you're just managing to keep your head above water. Whereas if you start to take those proactive steps in any area, but on social of seeking out more of the positive, that's where you're starting to get into new realms and experience environments and communities and places that you haven't been yet, you know?
Yep. Okay. Next question I have here. Trying to do these more a little rapid fire here, losing to be out of respect for time. How has technology changed the way we communicate as a world, as a planet, and what impact has this had on relationships?
You know, man, I think the biggest thing I see with this is people have lost patience and understanding. You know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you had something come up that was really important and you needed to notify someone, it was a phone call, maybe even a letter, right? And there was this understood expectation that like that person's living a life and it's going to take them some time to take in what I'm telling them and get back to me about it. And I think that with how easy it is to communicate with technology these days, people haven't kept that patience and understanding with other people, right? And even if they don't put it on the other person all the time, they start to internalize it, right? So it's either, why aren't they getting back to me? Like, oh, well, they're just ignoring me. Or it's, oh, did what I say not matter to them? Or am I not important? When in reality, like those are all just stories that our brain is creating because of the fact that we can instantly communicate, right? Instead of understanding like, hey, just because I sent a text doesn't mean that that's the only text that they're getting today or the only person that they're trying to talk to. And so if it's a day, a week before I hear back from them, like that doesn't mean that what I had to say wasn't important. That doesn't mean that they don't care. I think that's one of the big things.
Right. Doesn't just because they can doesn't mean they should at that moment.
Agreed, man. I love it.
So, like you mentioned, I loved it in your response. You mentioned the boundaries, and like you went about it a different way, but yeah, setting boundaries. One question about setting boundaries when I read that, and it's hey, just asking a simple question: how would you like to be contacted? How would you like me to follow up and contact you, communicate with you?
I love that, man. I think that that's such an easy example for everyone of we've lost the basics of communication, right? Like lay the groundwork. If you don't understand how someone prefers to be communicated with, you're just leaving the door even wider open to having miscommunication issues, right? Whereas if any relationship you're starting, whether it's professional, friendship, relationship, otherwise, establishing that how do you want to be communicated with is such an important base layer.
Next question here. Do you think that technology is making us more connected or more isolated?
I think that this one is one of those interesting ones where we as humans have the ability to determine the outcome of that answer, right? I have experienced both ends of that spectrum. I've been the person who's just scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and done nothing but compare and compare and compare. And it makes me feel really alone in this big world of ours, you know? And I've also been the person who is out there every day connecting with new people, trying to forge new relationships and foster new connections. And that end of the spectrum is the total opposite, right? I feel like all of a sudden, whether someone's in Canada or in another state, like they're right there with me, you know? So I think that that one is one of those where I would encourage people to understand like the ball's in your court. If you feel like you're on one end of that spectrum that you don't want to be, like It's how you're using the thing that determines that.
Yeah, how you like reactions again, going back to your reactions, and are you seeking, are you go create something maybe, because that's like you said, like wish YouTube was around back then, like it would have been open to go creating, and it doesn't have to be video. You can be creative in like really anything. Yeah, everyone's creative with
Yes,
something. It's they're just again that awareness thing is not coming up in them at that moment. But they're
right.
creative with something, they just have to find it.
Agreed, man.
So and so like the answer depends on how you use the tool, the communication tool.
Absolutely.
Any ethical concerns about the way technology is currently being used, or how should they be addressed?
I don't know that I necessarily have the big brain answer of how it should all be addressed. There's a lot of moving parts in the technology world, but I do think that, one of the things that really touches and pulls on my heartstrings from an ethical perspective and a moral perspective is kind of like I alluded to earlier. A lot of these apps who say their goal is to connect people and to build relationships and community are actually run based off of monetary concerns, right? And they're building the algorithms and the app out in a way that best benefits the bottom line of the business, not so much just benefits the bottom line of positive connection being formed and new communities being built. Don't get me wrong. Our world runs on money, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So it has to be taken into account. But I just think it would create such a different space in those social media outlets if the actual human connection that they say they're focused on was the priority, not just what money they're making off of it on the back end.
Yeah, acknowledge you to for you may not be the like expert, but you still put out your opinion on like kind of what you would do or what you would want to see at least. Like, acknowledge you for sharing that opinion.
Thank you, my friend.
Uh, how is the technology today changed the way we work and the impact it has on productivity and satisfaction?
This is a good question, Tommy. I down to my very core am an efficiency man. Like, if it can be done more efficiently, I want to do it that way because I'm not about wasting my time. So I do appreciate most technologies in that sense that yes, technology when used in a productive way creates streamlines and efficiencies that you would just never be able to reach without it. But I think similar to some of our conversations already in today's episode, like that doesn't just happen because you pick up technology every day, right? Just because you pick up your phone every day doesn't mean your calendar app automatically has all your stuff in it. Like you have to go into that app, you have to engage with that app and set it up proactively in a way that starts to streamline and create that efficiency. And I think that a lot of people just are at the point where they expect the technology to do the heavy lifting for them instead of putting in a little bit to the technology to really get that maximum efficiency out.
What's that phrase that I've heard a lot? Operator error?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty common one with technology for sure.
Or lack of operation?
Yes, yep, that too, for sure. The technology won't work for you if you're not working with the technology.
Put something in it, and depends on what you're going to get out of it. You said
Absolutely.
that on one of the responses here, and that just came to me just now. Yeah, I had something. Maybe if it comes back to me, I might revisit that. But
Certainly, man.
challenges,
Yeah.
biggest challenges in the industry, or your industry, or in any industry, biggest challenge.
So I think that, I would take it as an opportunity to speak on something that I think is a big challenge in my industry. And in my industry of health and wellness and taking care of oneself, there's been a big surge in the last 5 years or so of data collection, right? Whether it's through wearable technology on your wrist or it's through apps that count calories and help you track nutrition and energy expenditure. But there's been this big surge of looking at the numbers when it comes to people's health and wellness. And I think that it's important to be able to use data and information to help steer decision making. But I think that what it's gotten to a point of is it's actually taking people out of making decisions and being aware of what their process is actually doing for them. They just come back to what the numbers are saying. And if the numbers aren't what they want the numbers to be, then they kind of scoop the whole process that they're working on off as not beneficial. So I think that that's one of those places where I encourage people in the realms that I work with them on, like, yes, use the technology to track data, but don't let the data be the end all be all of whether or not you're being successful. You know yourself better inside and out than that piece of technology ever could. And so, figure that into account when you're looking at those numbers and how you're making decisions based off of them.
Yeah, the technology's been what I've been hearing. I don't use it too much. I listen to my body more, but listen to your body over the. Yeah, it might be like good a lot of times, but if it doesn't have certain information, like your phone can track like certain physiological data, it may not
Right.
give you everything. But listen to your body, actually what your body's telling you, not through a device.
I love that,
Stick with
Tommy.
that.
I think that one of the biggest things that's on the line there is belief and confidence in yourself, right? If we stay in the health and wellness realm, if someone's only taking the actions they're taking in the health and wellness realm to get data on their phone or their device to line up with what they want it to be, they're not really engaged, present, and focused in that process compared to if they're simply listening to their own feedback systems. And I think that when someone creates progress in any area by really engaging with that own self-awareness, that's where you earn a lot of credit with yourself. Because it's like, oh, wait, I didn't make that change because the Apple Watch told me to. I made that change because I identified that it needed to change and I made the decision to do it.
Example of me, I drink more water. I take a shower. I feel clean. Inside and out. I feel like $1,000,000 when I drinking plenty of water. And just one example
Yeah,
of
man.
the feeling.
I love it.
Now we're gonna get really direct here. We touched on it being creative. So, moment of truth here. Do you think technology is making us more creative or less creative, and why?
I think that this one, I definitely lean towards the more creative side of things. I think that anytime humans get to share information and ideas on the scale that we can now with social and technology, it's a net positive. Yes, as we've said today, there are the places where you can find the detracting comments or the negative ideas or the, trying to put people down. But I think far and away, you could say that since technology has continued to grow, we've seen creativity and advancements and innovation do nothing but progress at a rate that we've never seen before.
I want to get to our bonus questions here. Or maybe one of these.
Can't forget the bonus questions.
All right, this is a good one. Balance. Always good to balance. How do you balance the benefits of technology with the potential downsides? Addiction, such as addiction, distraction, any of the downsides.
It's a really good question, Tommy. And I think that, a really simple practice that I have in place right now, and I've kept throughout this first year of really stepping more into content creation and being engaged on social media, is Monday through Friday, you'll find content going out on my socials. You'll find me posting in stories and all that jazz. But Saturdays and Sundays, you will never find me on social media unless it's like this wildly once a year occurrence where I want to share something with someone or with people who are, in the network. But I really use that weekend time every week to disconnect and reset my kind of caliber to social media. I think one of the biggest things that has helped me keep real, accurate awareness of is those times when social media is pulling me down, right? I think that with no breaks ever, it's really hard to identify what you feel like when you haven't been on it, right? And having that perspective every weekend of not being on it and how I feel when I'm not looking at it any time of the day helps remind me like, hey, if I'm going through a random Thursday and I'm scrolling and I'm starting to get those feelings that what I'm on social to find, hey, like, okay, I'm going to step away for the rest of Thursday, right? Like, I'm not going to wait till the weekend. I'm identifying that feeling now, and I have that perspective because every weekend I remind myself of what it feels like to not be there.
Yeah, and it's so important to do that. I try to do that like at least once a week. I just I told you like off air before.
I love it.
I just step away. Now, if I'm home, then I'll still use it home, but I'll leave it behind if I go out anywhere. That for
Yep.
that one day. And I don't have the GPS. I don't have any of that. I have my car radio,
Yep.
and that's it. And my car and me and my feelings.
I love that,
And
man.
so you get to be away from a device that's trying to tell you how you're feeling.
Yes, dude. I think one of the biggest things that we miss as humans in our world today that's actually a really positive thing to experience is boredom, right? Like talk about building creativity. That's where so much creativity is born, right? When you're in those moments where you're like, well, I'm not really stimulated externally. How am I going to stimulate myself internally to get some of that feeling going? And that's where those creative juices start flowing and those big ideas that you haven't thought of before come from. So I love that, you and I are both examples of what can come from taking that time away on a regular basis.
We got about 10 minutes to do the wrap up, but that final thought about that before I get into sporting and everything was benefits of technology. Where were we going? What were we talking about? Lost
Um,
track.
no worries, my man. I think we were just talking about, the balance of things and taking that time away on a regular basis and the perspective that it gives us
Oh
from doing
yeah,
so.
and the ability to be a lot of people discovered that they disliked was fearing this moment, but the ability to just be with yourself by yourself and quiet,
Yes.
being in quiet.
When we first
2020 was a big year for that.
yes, it was. And when we first met, my man, you asked me what one of my, throw out a quote that I love, right? And I threw out the quote from Tom Bilyeu of life's all about how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And I think that that's what so many people use technology to run away from, right? Is instead of taking those 15 or 20 minutes regularly to sit with yourself and acknowledge the hard or difficult thoughts that come up and making actions or taking actions to change that, we just jump on the scroll and kind of numb this guy out so we don't have to confront those challenging inner conversations,
Yeah. So being by yourself. All right. So how can I support you? How can we listeners support you? You launching anything, or did you launch something coming out with something?
I appreciate the opportunity to share what I've got going on, Tommy. Really,
Was
the big
I'd love to do this. Like this is one of my favorite parts.
I think that the big thing I would share, or a few things that I would share with people. First and foremost, we've mentioned social media a couple times today. Instagram is really the big place where if people listen to this episode and they're like, "Where can I find this Zach guy?" that's where I'm at, right? Instagram, just at Zach Fagerberg. And we can make sure that, everyone can know where to find that. But the big project that I have coming up or wrapping up is I've actually been working most of this year on my first book ever. And it's going to be wrapped up and be coming out here in October. And the title of the book is An Intentional Life. And it really is a summation of the life lessons that I learned from the gym in my 20s that helped me understand how to take an intentional approach to life and create the change that I want to see in myself and in the world. And so, people can follow me on Instagram for, the fine-tuned details of when it'll be available and where it'll be available and that kind of thing. But I'm really excited for the book to be out here in just a couple weeks and for people to be able to take a look at the ideas that I've put in it.
First book, congratulations on getting that book done, the book deal done, especially your first one, because that's a lot of people, they like seek to do that and they drop it for whatever reason. So, and you followed through and you got that launching. So congratulations on the book launch coming soon. Next month.
Thank you, my friend. Yep. And I would echo, I loved what you just said there, that many people, start it and then decide at some point to step away. If anyone else who's listening to this is thinking about doing anything like that, know that I've had those moments this year, right? There have been many moments in the process of writing it this year where I'm like, what am I doing? Is this really I don't know. Should I keep doing this? Should I keep working on it? And as I'm closing in on the final steps here, I would give everyone who's listening a resounding yes. Like, stick through those moments, keep taking it one step at a time. Put that big project out into the world that you've been working on or thinking about, because that's how we make the world a better place.
And it's not just with like books too, starting a podcast.
Yes, anything.
I started this as a film podcast, and now I it's like I had the same question, like, what am I doing? And I would change the direction. Now I think I went to tech, and now I'm actually trying to come back to the film and incorporating the tech side still. So it's film, but a little different perspective this time.
I love it, man. A really good example of just continuing to take the action, even in those messy or uncomfortable situations, And I think that the other thing that I would throw out to anyone listening is that, if in listening to Tommy and I share conversation today, you're like, man, I kind of like to talk to Zach more about some of these things that I've heard on the podcast today or about wellness and health. If people are going and finding me on Instagram, they'll be able to schedule a free 60-minute call with me. I am not the kind of guy or coach who's like, oh, are you really interested? Because I'll withhold information until you prove to me that you're really interested. No, like, if we schedule that call, I want to pour into you for 60 minutes. I want to help you get to a point where you're more confident in the actions you're taking in those areas of life. So, yes, people can, through finding me on Instagram, also connect with me that way if they're looking for some FaceTime and some ability to ask me questions and that kind of thing.
Yep, and I'll have those all linked up on the episode too.
Awesome.
I'll have you use Facebook. I have the Facebook link, but I know primarily Instagram.
And yes, and I can make sure that
your Lincoln bio I'll have there too.
Wonderful.
Which is also on your Instagram.
Yes, and that's where people can find the link to, schedule a call with me. That's where they'll be able to find the book when it's out and available. That's where I keep everything linked for sure.
3 final questions to inspire my podcast inspiration. Lewis Howes, he has the 3 truths, 3 lessons, and here's I've been kind of changing up, revamping, but bonus questions here, final 3. Ready, here we go. How can businesses, individuals, how can work together to ensure that new technologies are developed and deployed in a responsible and sustainable way to benefit society as a whole?
I think we mentioned it briefly in the episode here, but I think that really continuing to hold ourselves to the high standard of, is that positively impacting people or is it making me money? right? And not saying that you can't do both, but if making money is your primary driving factor, I think we might be losing or leaving behind a little bit of the viewpoint on, is this technology really being built and put together in a way that benefits everyone, like you just said?
Right. As I've been finding too, if you focus on the service, the other part will come.
Yes, couldn't have said it better myself, my friend.
So here's the three truths version. This is a two-parter. When it comes to our constant companions, our smartphones, smart devices, what are the three undeniable truths you observed about their impact?
Oh man. This is a great question. I think the first one I would say is that they're mirrors of where you're at right now, right? If you're in that reactive state, if you're in that not seeking out positivity state, surrounding yourself with those technologies is only going to reverberate that feeling and that experience. If you're in the opposite mindset, then it will mirror that as well. I think another truth, we mentioned it at the very beginning of the episode, it's not going anywhere. So stop pushing it away. Stop telling yourself it's not a part of life. Step into taking the ownership of how it's going to integrate with your life in the ways that you want it to. I think the third one that I would throw out there as a truth would be also, as we said today, it doesn't have to be all the time. That's a falsity that anyone puts on themselves. The truth is you can decide when, where, and how you interact with it if you're willing to do kind of the mental heavy lifting of putting those practices in place.
I love that. Great. And then the second part, what are lessons we should all learn in handling these powerful, responsible, like some lessons that we can take?
You know, man, I think I would boil it down to the one that we've kind of reiterated multiple times throughout the episode, and that's take responsibility for it. Don't let technology carry you away with how it's built and designed. Stay mindful, aware of yourself as the human being, and remind yourself that you're the one in control of that technology if you choose to be so.
All right. And final question. What is your definition of innovation?
Ooh, this is a good question. To me, innovation is all about you not being afraid to be authentic. That's where innovation and new things get brought to the world. The people who are thinking about what others are going to say or are constantly beating themselves down to the point that they don't do the thing that's on their mind. That's what holds back innovation and new things from coming to light that positively impact everyone. Own who you are, own the gifts and the ideas that you're meant to bring to the world, and step up to the plate and bring them.
Be yourself, be authentic, and be in ownership. Love it, man. Zach Fagerberg.
Thank you,
Thanks
Tommy.
for
It was a
coming
pleasure
on.
to be on.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. It's always a blast exploring the tech universe with you. But alas, it's time to wrap things up. If you've got burning tech questions or just want to say hello, remember you can reach out to us on our website, social media, or drop us an email. We love hearing from you. And if you found this episode as electrifying as we did, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us keep the tech goodness flowing. Don't forget to share Tech Time with Sweet Tea with your fellow techies. The more, the merrier, right? As we sign off today, always remember that tech is a tool and it's here to serve you. So use it wisely, explore fearlessly, and keep it real in your tech adventures. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep rocking the digital world. Catch you on the next episode of Tech Time with Sweet Tea.